Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I'm Michael Gracia, and I have a great show planned here for you. Um, but before we bring anyone on, I want to remind you that right down here at the Wiz Comic on Facebook and Instagram, a new one came out today. Every Wednesday by 9 a.m. Eastern, you will have a Wiz Wednesday there for you. I think this week I did a pretty good one, by the way. So let's bring on our guest. A couple of weeks ago, we had Hades on from ASAP Imagination, and now we got another one from ASAP here, who is a writer on one of the books. And I've been talking to him backstage. Only talked for about 10 minutes. Awesome dude already. I really like this guy. Let's bring on David Howard, also known as Nem.
Hey, what's
Hey.
going on, everybody? So happy to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me on the podcast, and can't wait to get into it and talk with you. So,
No problem. Look, I'm excited to have you on. Like I said, we just talked for a few minutes backstage, and I was enjoying our conversation. But before we go further, and here is Hades coming on. Yo, hey both. Uh, welcome, Hades. Thanks for tuning
hey,
in. I don't know what time it is by you. Probably what, like 1 a.m. or something out there for him.
yeah, it's
Um,
like 2 o'clock in the morning there for him, so
yeah,
he's
that
up late.
guy. He needs sleep, I think. Uh, but before we get into all the fun stuff and talk about comics and what you do and all this exciting stuff, tell us about you. And not that telling us about you won't be exciting, but you know what I mean. Just tell us about your background, what got you into comics, your history, the whole thing, who your influences are. I want to know the whole story.
Sure. Yeah. So, I live here in Southern California. I live in Riverside, California, with my wife, and I have two children still at home. One of my oldest child recently got his own house and moved out. So,
Congratulations.
thank you. So, and I grew up here in Southern California, about I don't know, about half hour away from where I live now, and eventually when I graduated high school, I got out of there and I went to college back on the East Coast. I went to the West Point, the United States Military Academy, and then served as an Army officer for a while, where I met my wife, who was going to school at the time over near West Point, and she's from New Jersey. And I served and then got out, and I worked in computers for a long time. And that was kind of my era where I thought I had to have a quote unquote real job,
Yeah.
one of those things that to pay the bills. And unfortunately, I had some health accidents, but I'd always been a writer, and I had been writing horror stories since I was about 8 years old, and then just got into writing all sorts of things: short stories, poems, screenplays, everything, all through high school. And I kept doing that as a just as a hobby, or something to do behind the scenes. I never thought that I would get published, and I didn't think my work was good enough to even put out there. So I would write stuff and then just throw it away, or I'd put it anonymously on fan fiction sites and stuff out there. And there are rumors that there are fan fiction out there that people want to know, and I'm never gonna let people see them because it's just not gonna happen. But yeah, so I was doing that behind the scenes, and like I said, I had some health issues where I couldn't work out of the house anymore, and eventually, um, I'd always had this love for comics as well, so that goes hand in hand. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, that story. I was sick as a child, and my dad brought me home a pirate ship model and a huge, giant size DC comic, Flash versus Superman Race of the Century. And I still have it.
Nice.
It's up on my
Wow.
wall.
Wow.
And yeah, and that got me into DC Comics. And I was Super Friends fan. I had the sheets. I had the whole thing. And then I got into Marvel, the '60s Spider-Man cartoon I watched as a kid, and then everything that came out in the '80s. And my love for that, just stayed there the whole time. And so I saw that there was this organization asking for comic book reviewers, and my wife was like, you should do that. And she pushed me. And my wife, is 9 times out of 10, if something good or wise is coming out of my life, it's probably from her.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and applied and got accepted, and I started doing that. And one thing led to another, and next thing you know, I was on red carpet premieres interviewing people for anime.
Wow.
Got to interview Cassandra Peterson of Elvira fame,
Hmm.
doing Comic-Con walks and interviewing the people behind Cobra Kai, and that led me to making contacts. And I met Hades, and then Hades was like, "Hey, we want to try writing a comic book after I get some work from the."
Oh, hold on one second. I'm getting a little choppiness. I don't know if it's your end or mine. It's the volume. Let me just check. I'm just gonna switch over. If it's too noisy, let me know. I'm gonna switch over to my regular speakers as opposed to my headsets and see if that.
No problem.
Oh wait, you're back. I don't know. Maybe it's.
Yeah, I think I moved my mic closer to my mouth. I think that was part of it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No problem. So yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to say hi to someone in the audience. Brian, thanks for coming in. He goes, "Get ready for a great interview, David. It's going to be a blast." So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Continue.
No, so yeah, so I had been doing some work behind the scenes with him, and I'd helped him design some organizations and things like that, based on, I love world building, and everything, and he was interested in what I was doing and asked me to write a comic for them, and I started working with ASAP Imagination and then writing OPSEC, and then I had thrown a number of novels away at the time, and I was working on one, and my wife said, "You should publish this," and Hades said, "You should publish this," and I published that, and so now I have novels out, and then eventually that all turned into me jumping in whole hog. So not only do I work for ASAP Imagination, I've created my own studio as well, Raincross Press, and I'm doing stuff with them and my own comics with them as well. So it's just been a whirlwind, and it's one of those things where it took me a while to get where I needed to be, but I'm finally there, and I feel right at home here among independent creators and comics. These are you all are my people, and I'm very happy to be here. So,
well, first of all, thank you for that. But yeah, I mean, listen, you basically were saying my childhood and how I grew up. I mean, it's funny. I grew up sick. I had health issues. It wasn't a DC comic for me, but a Mad magazine instead, and that's But I grew up on the same cartoons and led me into stuff. And I started self-publishing in '97.
Wow.
Got into the whole webcomic thing early on the internet, which I didn't get the fame like others did, but it taught me a lot. And then I was in and out doing work for a while, and like you were saying, how you finally feel you're coming into kind of like your own as where you're supposed to be. As I started bringing back the Wiz this year, I've gotten that feeling myself. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, and it's like, I think one of the things that's, a lot of times you have that self-doubt, that negative talk, and a lot of times I'd be like, this was back when I was in my 40s. I'm like, I'm too old to start something new, and it's like, that's crazy. It's like, you're never too old, So.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm in my 40s. I'm not far from 50, but I'm much further from 40 than I am.
Yeah.
And I started the Wiz in my 40s. I stopped him because I got sick and needed to take a break, and I finally brought him back, and I'm finally feeling I'm starting to get thing. But that whole doubt, that negative talk you were just talking about, I had that a few weeks ago. I've talked about it on the air about the Wiz and how I felt that certain strips I was doing was not getting the same oh man, what's the word? Responses as when I posted, interactions. That was the word. I'm not getting the same interactions when I posted certain types of strips, and I'm like, oh, this makes me think. And all of a sudden, I'm like, am I not good anymore? What happened? Is the Wiz over with not even a few months of him being back? You know what I mean? It was like a really negative feeling. And then I talked with a few friends, and they gave me not just encouragement, but told me what they liked about the strip and things that they found that weren't working for them. So they gave me an honest opinion, and I was like, wow. Not saying I listened to what they had to say. I'm just saying it was nice to hear. It's one of those things. I've had a lot of portfolio reviews in my life, and every time I bring a portfolio, and this has been probably since I was in my early 20s, I've never gotten a bad review. And some people are like, that's great, but not to me. I can't improve and get better if you can't tell me where I need to improve and get better, you know, and I don't think I'm a perfect artist. I don't think anyone's a perfect artist. So I don't know what was happening at those reviews, but that's something that I've dealt with. And
Yeah.
George Medina, I just want to say hi to, he's in there.
Hey, George, what's going on? Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think at first it was difficult to hear criticism, you know, but I got over that, and I think you have to, you know, get rid of your ego, and I agree with you. It helps me get better. You know, I like to hear the praise. Don't get me wrong. You
Yeah,
know,
it's nice.
I'm a whiny, needy artist like anybody else, but
Yeah.
you know, but I do like to hear, you know, what people like, what they don't like, and I also recognize, you know, now that it took me a while to get there, but I realize I will never please everybody, you know.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff I write is not gonna, you know, the stuff I write isn't gonna be for everybody, and that's fine, you know, because I don't think you can write something that everybody is going to like. I think that's impossible.
Absolutely. I do that when I do my jokes. I show them to my wife. She doesn't laugh at a lot of them, but she's like, "Oh, it's cute. It's fun." But at the end of the day, if I made myself laugh, that's how I judge a joke.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
that's
My my wife it can be brutal sometimes. I mean, she's not mean about it, but she'll read stuff sometimes and she'll be like, "This stinks." I'm like, "Okay,
yeah.
I guess I need to rewrite it." So
I know my wife can be the same way. She's like, you know, she'll be like, I don't understand the joke, and I'll explain it to her. She goes, "Oh well, if I had that knowledge going in, it would have been funny. But if I don't have the knowledge, most people probably don't." And you know, she'll remind me of that.
Yep.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I posted a strip that was kind of Lord of the Rings meets The Godfather inspired. And I was talking to a friend of mine last. I was on actually not the other on Monday night. I was on my friend Ray Felix's show, and we were talking about that strip. And the first panel is a hobbit and an elf, and the elf is saying, "Leave the arrow, take the lambus bread." And he's like, "Oh, I guess you have to know Lord of the Rings, or you have to know Lord of the Rings to get the joke." I go, "Well, only that term, but it's a Godfather joke."
Yeah.
You know, and he was like, "Well, who doesn't know the Godfather?" So
leave the gun, take the cannoli. So
yeah, exactly.
I got it. That was great.
Thank you. Yes, George is right. Comedy is subjective.
Absolutely.
Did I put it up? Yeah, it is. So yeah, but anyway,
so yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
That's kind of my one over the world, you know, intro into everything. But you know, now I feel that I'm establishing myself bit by bit, and the cool part is that I'm surrounded by so many people who are not only talented in their own right, but are willing to help as well. You know, so
well, that's one of the things about the indie crowd. I think is very impressive. It's one of the reasons I have the show is to promote indie creators. But you know, like I said, I've been doing this since '97 as you know, starting with self-publishing and working in comics on and off since then. The majority of my friends are from the comic industry in some form, and not one of them have I ever met that have been a jerk. And if I ask them a question, they're like, "Oh well, I can't tell you how I did that. It's, you know, it's my trade secret," or something. It's like, no, we're all there to just kind of help each other. There are people I talk with where I feel like, "Hey, listen, I'm falling off a deadline. Can you just check in with me every couple of days to make sure that I'm meeting, you know, that I'm still doing my work, I'm not slacking off, or so, or can you, you know, or you know, like I'll go like just talk marketing with them and be like, because I have a very, I guess, different point of view on shows. George knows it. Hades knows it. I've been a little vocal on my show about it, but I have different points of view on how comics should be done in this day and age, how conventions should be done, or why maybe most artists shouldn't be doing them now. Like there's a lot of stuff, but this is something I've gathered since '97, stuff I've observed. But when I talk about it, and yeah, sometimes anger comes out, but it's usually more passionate anger that's coming out than anything. They don't get angry at with me, or at least they don't show that they're angry with me for saying this stuff, because I'll disagree with
Right.
what some of them are saying or what they're doing, and I'm not saying it's bad for them to do what they're doing. It's just not for me, and I don't see the trend of what they're doing in my eyes. I could be completely wrong, you know,
Right.
but it's stuff like that, and I could just have normal conversations with people about this and sit down and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Do you think it'll work? What are you doing? How or you read my comic. What do you think I could do to get the Wiz out there more? You know, like we'll talk about this stuff. And I'm building a Wiz website right now,
Oh, great.
and I was talking to a friend of mine just about just as simple as hosting sites. Like, what do they think are the better hosting sites for this type of thing I'm planning, and prices. Like I just had a conversation about that a little bit ago today, and it's not it's not like people and they ran a strip very similar to the Wiz, so they know about these type of websites, and they were just happy to give the advice. I know it was a long way around to get it, but they're
No, no.
all awesome people in this industry. I don't know one. Well, okay, I don't know one jerk in the indie circle. I'll say that. I know a few pros I'm not fans of, but
And
I
we'll
will
leave it
never
at
give
that.
that. Well, I don't know if you. I'll tell you this story, and I will never say who the artist is. When I and this and to this day, it's hysterical to me, because a few weeks ago he actually liked one of my posts on Instagram. But there was a pro artist when I was 16 years old. I read his comic. I loved his artwork. I used to copy out of his, like try to learn his style, try everything. And I remember going to a show and seeing him there, and I showed him my portfolio, and he tore me a new one. At
Wow.
16 years old, he ripped me a new one. And then a few tables away was Alex Simmons. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Alex Simmons asked to see my portfolio, and I'm like, nah, it's not very good. He could see I was upset, but he was an educator as well as a writer and artist. And he looked at it, he goes, listen, he goes, you're not bad. You just need to work on your anatomy. And once I perfected my anatomy, I got better. But he's like, what a lot of people do will see potential in an artist and want to knock them before they become competition.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And when I went into education, I made sure to never be that way to any student. But I'm going to say maybe 8 years ago or so, I was walking New York Comic Con with a friend of mine who had a table. He's like, Michael, you got to meet this guy. And he called the artist over and he's like, hey, you got to meet my friend Michael. And he does these great humor things. And I showed him my stuff. He goes, I love this humor stuff. I can't do this type of stuff. I love when I get to see it. And I'm like, yeah, no, I've followed your work for years. I was very polite, the whole thing. We started following each other on social media. And now he likes my stuff. And every time he does, I crack up because I remember him tearing me a new one.
Wow.
Just,
Wow. Success is the best revenge, though, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, that's just one of my favorite stories. But
Great. Great.
anyway, yeah, let's talk about though the type of stuff you're doing. So you've been with ASAP for how long now?
I've been with them almost since, well, not the very beginning, but uh, fairly close to the beginning. And I am so bad with dates because everything just starts to kind of blend together. But
Yeah, yeah.
I believe it was 2020 or 2019, so somewhere
Okay.
around there. I'm sure Hades will correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but yeah, I was behind the scenes at first, and then I was doing a lot of writing. Wrote a lot of short stories and backgrounds and things like that. And then yeah, the idea for OPSEC came along, and that is one of Hades' big strengths, as really is that he'll look at stuff and he'll just latch onto the ideas that are going to work. And he's like,
yeah.
this OPSEC was a government agency that I created behind the scenes with Hades, along with some other stuff as well, which hasn't come to light yet. And he said, I think this would be a great comic. And I said, yeah, I agree. So, and I started writing it. And I think the best way I could describe it is it's one part X-Files and one part uh, BPRD, Bureau of Paranormal Research and
Yeah,
Defense, Hellboy.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's kind of that, and OPSEC is within the ASAP Imagination world. is the government agency tasked with controlling the superhuman, the paranormal, but also the gifted. So those with superpowers and things like that, they're the ones that keep them in line. So they're government agents who are tasked with making sure that nobody steps out of the line. And there might be a nefarious motive behind them as well, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. So
Interesting. I mean, listen. First of all, you've just sold me with your description, but I was looking to see on the website. I just realized I didn't pull up the cover, and I wanted to see if I could find the cover on there. Is there a search? OPSEC.
Yeah, if you go on the Any One World and look under the D.W. Howard collection, I think I could send you that link right now. So
yeah, you can put it in the private chat.
Yeah.
Or if you want to put it in the actual chat, the audience can see it. I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
They can go to that, but don't leave the page. Don't leave the stream, guys. Just open in a new link in a new window.
Let's see. Let me find it real quick. There we go. So, here it is in the. I'll put it in the comments.
Okay, and then I'll take that.
Oh.
I see the cover right behind you, actually, on the wall. I see a Sherlock Holmes fan.
Yep.
Cool.
So, let's see. It's not letting me comment here.
It's okay. If you can't, then just drop it in the private chat, and I'll grab it for everyone.
Oh, there we go. I got it now. So, there. I put it up just now. So.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So it is. That's right there, but I'm going to click on it. Whoops. Oh, I can't click on it. What the heck? Let me see.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh no, I'm not going to ban the user. I don't know for some reason. Okay, but it's I can look at the link and type it in there.
But yeah, over my shoulder, you can't see the cover. That's OPSEC number 2 right there. That's and 3 is coming out soon. And I am a Sherlock Holmes fan, so
actually, I got to introduce you to a friend of mine. He actually, I don't know if he's still doing it. He used to do talks on Sherlock Holmes.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. This particular piece of art I have back here was done by a comic strip artist at a Comic-Con. And unfortunately, he wasn't getting any business. You know, nobody wanted to talk to him because he does comic strips, which is crazy to me. And he drew 2 custom pieces of art for myself and my wife. He did all of the Sherlock Holmes here from the various incarnations. And then he did all of the live action Catwomans for my wife. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's awesome. I gotta pull up and show you some. After this, we look at this. I'll show. I think it's on my website. I have a Sherlock Holmes piece I did that cool. I still want to work on more. But so this I'm really excited for here. Just your description of it. You said X-Files meets what was it?
BPRD.
BPRD. I always forget the title. BPRD. That just sounds fun. The artwork looks great. Looks like, something. It kind of has. It does have a little bit of that Hellboyish feel when I look at it, but like with maybe more of a Bruce Timmish mixture in there.
The artist is Matteo Mascherowski. He's out of Argentina, and Hades found him, I think, on Facebook. But when Hades asked me the look and feel, I was thinking of the book. I said, I think we should try and be Mignola-esque. We don't want to copy him, but something similar. And so, Matteo knocked this out of the park, and I like that we go with this color scheme, and we play with the colors for different things, but we try and keep that same kind of color schemes going on. So, and those are the 2 main OPSEC agents there in the front. So, Indra Jafari and Nigel Hammersmith. So,
those are awesome names.
Thank you. Yeah,
awesome.
And they're kind of the straight men, and then we have the badge for OPSEC there in the front. The symbol with the Latin motto for OPSEC there. And don't ask me what it means because I wrote that a long time ago and I forgot. Somebody asked me that the other day and I couldn't believe I couldn't remember. So I got to go back and look up what it means again. So,
I can't even read what it says. But oh, there it goes. I couldn't tell you that. I don't know Latin, so
yeah,
it's just
it's been a while. So
yeah. But
my all of
I like the symbols that you're using, the like the unicorn and the lion there. It's
yep,
nice.
yep. And I'm excited because we're introducing an issue. The next issue is coming out. We're introducing a superhero team from the past that is tied into more England symbology and stuff like that, which is going to be kind of cool. So
Oh, that's awesome. You're going into, well, you said symbology, but you're not go. You're Are you going into any of like the British myth or just symbols of Britain?
some of the other titles in our world, which is the ASAP Imagination main continuity, do a lot of
Mhm.
stuff with the British mythology and Gaelic and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I have some of that as well, but that is probably not going to show up in the comic until later.
Okay.
Um, but I'm excited about that. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's really cool. I have to be careful. I have this tendency to want to give everything away. I've gotten much
Yeah.
better at it,
Well, don't
but
worry. I won't ask. I won't ask a lot of questions then, because the thing is, and it tends to happen to me too when I'm talking to you. I'm like, I just want to know. I want to know, but at the
no.
same time, I want to get a copy of the book and read it myself and get excited for it. That the more and more I do this show, um, sometimes before I do the show, somebody will send me a preview copy, or they'll send me a watermarked PDF to read or something, and I'll be like so excited that I make sure to get a copy of the books later, whether it's through Kickstarter or through their website. And like when when people describe the books to me, I just get so excited. Now, art geeks me out, but listening to you talk about writing, you're not really. I mean, you're talking about it, but you're not officially talking about it yet. I want to get more into
Okay.
talking writers because outside of like George and a couple of other people, I don't have a lot of writers on the show specifically. Most of the people I have are artists on here,
Okay.
and without giving away any of your story, like that would spoil the story. Can you talk about, and I don't want to just say your process, like, oh, I sit down and I just start like your research process for stories like this. Now, um obviously it's in symbolism, you said, of British symbolism. Is that something you had knowledge of? Is that something that you had to research? Did Hades say this is how I want the book? Like what was your process for like coming up with the ideas and characters?
Hades was really open to whatever I wanted to do within reason, So he's like he or Lori, who has now taken over as editor in chief, always read through things, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say they rein me in, but they're like, we're not ready for that, or I'm a horror writer by, I'm not going to say by trade because I do a lot of different things, but that's one of the things I really love to do.
Yeah.
Some of that is probably a little too dark for what we're doing, at least at the moment.
Okay.
And so we kind of avoid some of that stuff. Or I think one of the funniest comments I've ever gotten was a couple of my characters dropped some F bombs once, and Lori kind of our editor kind of was like, "Oh, so we're dropping F bombs now." I was like, "Oh, maybe I need to edit that out." So, uh, so I mean, that was interesting and
Mhm.
fun. But no, I think that all the research that I've been doing for this has just been a lifetime of reading, reading comics, reading books. I started reading young and haven't stopped. I read The Hobbit when I was 7. I think I
Wow.
read The Iliad and the Odyssey when I was 8 and 9. And just kept going from there, and just nonstop voracious reader and comics and everything
Mhm.
else. And one of my favorites was always, for instance, I loved T.H. White's The Once a Future King and
Mhm.
Lamort de Arthur. So, I'm familiar with all those and played D&D. And so I took all those mythology in. So it's just a lifetime of reading and role playing and reading comics. And I think that's what it means to be a writer in general, is that you need to look at the world around you and soak everything in, because you never know what you're going to take and use as inspiration to write something. And
Yeah.
so I had that experience to draw on. And then on top of that, one of the things that Hades had approached me with to do OPSEC was, I mean, obviously I was in the military, and I've been around DC and all of that before. And I'm not saying there's evil organizations in DC, but there's organizations in DC,
Yeah.
and the military, and I'm familiar with the way they work and the jargon.
Mhm.
And so when I was designing government organizations, I was leaning heavily on the real world experience I have on how those work, and how organizations fight with each other, and
Mhm.
have battles for territory and everything else. So I leveraged that. And then finally, I love to watch British shows. I
Mhm.
grew up watching all sorts of British television shows and comedies, from Monty Python to Faulty Towers to
Mhm.
Mr. Bean. I'm naming all comedies, but there are other
Yeah.
things I watched, and I love 2000 AD and heavy metal. So I picked up a
Mhm.
lot of the speech patterns and stuff from that. But even then, there are times when Hades will say something, I'll be like, I have no idea what you said. You're speaking English, but I don't know what you're saying. And I'll ask him sometimes. I'm like, I'm looking for a word here, and
Mhm.
I'm using the Southern California word, so I need the English word, and he'll give it to me. I'm like, okay, so
Yeah. It's funny that you say stuff like I write too, but I don't write, you know, like you or George write. I just kind of come up with ideas and I write really, cheesy stories. And but my one of my hardest things to write is dialogue, because I'm just so accustomed to being around the people that I'm around that I don't listen, or I don't have that exposure. So sometimes it's really hard for me to write characters from other areas because of that. And I'll look up like native slang to that culture or whatever. It's still the hardest
yeah.
thing for me to do.
I think the other thing that I like to do, especially in the comic, I wrote a bunch of short stories before I even started writing the comic, because I just wanted to flesh out the characters.
Yeah.
And I put little details in there that I did do research on the internet for. So I'm like, okay, um, for instance, one short story takes place in an insane asylum near Ipswich. So I'm like, okay, what is it like up there in Ipswich? What are the thoroughfares? If I'm going from London to Ipswich, what do I drive on? And then I added that stuff into the short story. And then when people who are from the UK read it, and you just mentioned that they're driving up, and I forget the name. I think it's the M6. It could be the M4, but they're driving up these roads, and they're like, they recognize the highways and everything. It immediately takes them right into the story. So it's those little things, I think, sometimes that don't seem that important that make a huge difference. It's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. So
Yeah. No, that's great. Um, I have a comment here from, well, it's really a question from Hades saying, ask them about, is that Maisel?
Maisie.
Maisie. So, oh, it's an exclamation point. I'm sorry.
So you saw Indra and Nigel on the
Hmm.
front of the first cover. Behind me on the second cover right there, that is Barbara King, and at her feet, you can kind of see her, is Maisie, and you can see there's a bunch of toys around her. Well, Barbara is actually the one that came out of that insane asylum near Ipswich, by the way, and she's kind of their official, unofficial partner that has been tasked to the OPSEC group. And there's a lot going on with her that the readers don't know about yet, but she has the ability to bring toys to life and control them, and they become like murderous toys. Not only that, her doll down there is actually alive and is possessed by a demon and is snarky and fun and loves to get in fist fights and grows shark teeth when she gets angry, and claws. And
Wow.
yeah, she's pretty crazy. And I will give this away. And in the first issue, she ends up fighting a monster, and the monster throws her out of a castle, and she's yelling at the monster. She throws her out, and she lands on the ground, and then Spunky Maisie gets up, her fists curled, her shark teeth out, her eyes glowing because she's upset, and she's like, "That is it." And then she spits a big chunk of fur and flesh out onto the ground and jumps into the fight again. So that is Maisie the doll right there in a
Wow,
nutshell.
that's great. It's creepy.
Yeah.
It's great. That is something people are going to want, action figures of and little plush.
Absolutely. And actually, Lori, recently at a con, she cosplayed Maisie, which was pretty cool. So pretty cool to see. I wasn't expecting that, and when she did that, that tickled me pink. Maisie is a lot of fun to write. So while Indra and Nigel are kind of the straight men of the they play it straight and they're government agents, Maisie and Barbara King are I'm not gonna say comic relief, but they are more fun to play with. So and I'm trying to I think I could show you a picture of Maisie if I could pull it up. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's see here.
And listen, this sounds like a really fun story that you're telling here. How many, while you're looking for it, how many issues is this story planned to be?
The first arc is four issues, and then we're going to do a trade of the first arc, and then all total, the larger arc will be 13 issues. So it'll be 3 4-issue arcs, and then a 13th issue, which wraps it all up. So
nice.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. Here we go. Yeah. So I think I can share that on here, and you can share screen and window. There we go.
Get to the right monitor here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. So that's Maisie upset. So that's her walking in to give that monster a piece of her mind. So, and and she looks like just a little Cabbage Patch Kid when she's not animated and going around and everything. So.
Yeah. And she never gets angry or harms. What was it, Barbara? You said was her name?
No. And Barbara is kind of a woman child, So she's a 21-year-old woman, but she dresses like a little kid and acts, very young and everything. Dresses young, but she's got a very dark backstory, and that I can't give away yet because I did write. Like I said, I wrote the short story. It's kind of her origin story, and I think we may use that eventually in one form or another. But it's interesting how she came into her powers and everything. So, and that goes back to the world building. I love to do these backstories for them, even if it never sees the light of day. It's the kind of thing I like, and I have it in the Bible for the comic, and I give it to the artist and everything. So.
Well, let me ask you. Speaking of world building, what is your favorite part of world building?
It depends on what kind of world I'm building, to be honest with you. But I love coming up with the setting, and first of all, the setting is always the most important thing. But then, based on what that setting is, and I'll give you an example for Raincross Press. My own personal setting is a science fiction setting, and so once I did that, and I knew what I wanted to have, I went back. And the current year in that setting is 2587. I went back to current year now, 2023, and wrote I think it's 65 pages of history from 2023 to 2587, including timelines and dynasties and technologies, and then just fleshed out those technologies, and I did my little doodles of schematics on different technology and everything. And all of that is for the artist. It's for myself. It's obviously for, one day I would love to publish things or do a game or something like that with it. But all those different stuff and building it out. Same thing with fantasy settings. One of my favorite things, and we did a podcast about this, was building magic systems. So how does the magic work? Why does it work? What does it interface with society? All these different things. Those are the cool things you get to play with. So I love doing that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the magic one. I have a story all about magic. That was one of my favorite parts of the world building, was planning out. I have different types of magic, how each of those work. If you want to, let's just call them wizards for now. But the different types of wizards they can, and how their powers work, and when they can do so. Like, just building that whole idea of a magic system was like one of the greatest experiences.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, I do say that it's so much fun to do that in science fiction. It's not magic, it's technology, which is
Yeah.
the same thing. But I also love writing the history. I was this close to being a military history major at West Point instead I did computer science, but I've always kept up with it. And I think it's so much fun because then when you're writing those characters, you have that history to lean on because all that history is affecting them in the present. And so, and then, nerdy people like us like to go back into those timelines and be like, hey, what's the story of this guy who was assassinated or something, and they mentioned, or all this different stuff. So yeah, I love that stuff. Very Game of Thrones, but I love that. So I love if George R.R. Martin would ever finish the books, but that's a whole other podcast. So
Yeah, we can talk. I'll say though, I never read the books, and I kind of spaced out after season 2 on that show. I just couldn't do it anymore. It just was, it actually, for me, it was the world building. It was the weird way they were using magic and trying to bring in the Catholic faith or the Christian faith, whichever one. I forgot what they were doing, like how, what it was. But I'm like, I just didn't buy it. I just didn't buy the way they were. And I'm like, you're just throwing me off. You're not building the right fantasy world for me.
It's a strange setting because it's a what's the proper term for it in fantasy? I don't remember. I think it's not a no magic setting. It's a low magic setting. Like there's high magic settings and there's low magic settings, and that one is it's very understated magic. I mean, even more understated than like Lord of the Rings, which is considered a low magic setting, sort of. So, it's kind of weird, and it's like a mix of historical and fantasy all set together. So it definitely is its own beast. So
so let me ask you about, you said it was called Rain Cross Press, your own company.
Yeah.
And you're doing you said the world you built was science fiction, so all the stuff in Rain Cross is within a science fiction universe, or is that something you're going to just say these stories are science fiction, then move to another world building?
Right now we're concentrating on one universe, and it's a universe I came up with called Blood World. And we're doing 2 separate titles at the moment. We're building slowly but surely, and so there's 2 titles in production right now within that Blood World universe. And there's a lot going on. It goes throughout the entire solar system of our solar system, but it's far future. And I'm writing one of the titles called Blood World Ganymede Prime, and it's about the Ganymede monarchy, and they are techno-futurists, transhumanists that also are religious rebels. So they were kicked off Earth. They're criminals. They led a rebellion, and their descendants crash landed on Ganymede and have created this society. And it's really kind of, the best way I can describe it is Dune meets Game of Thrones. That's their society. And their main enemies are the Seoul Scientific Symposium, which are basically all about genetic engineering and a variety of things. And so you have these 2 opposing ideologies. Meanwhile, on Earth, Earth has basically crumbled, and people are living off the decaying remains of what was the Terran Federation on Earth before that fell apart. And so there's a story that we're doing right now, a comic by my partner, Jeff Bracey, called Fellhand. And it's basically Thundar the Barbarian, where humans have become mutated to live in the Terran wastes. and he's rediscovering the old technology of the Terran Federation on Earth and stuff like that.
That
So
sounds awesome.
thank you. Yeah,
Just
so
awesome.
that's kind of what we got going on. So
Now you were saying, obviously, you're into fantasy, you play D&D, and you're working in the sci-fi world. I'm just curious, what is your favorite science fiction?
my favorite science fiction
Of
of
yeah, of all time.
um, does fantasy count as science fiction?
If it's I don't know. I guess if there's science fiction in the fantasy, absolutely. If it's
Ooh,
sci-fi fantasy, maybe.
that's a really difficult question. Um, Man, I'll give you two. One is a book, so I love all of the Ender books by Orson Scott Card,
Hmm.
Ender's Game, and all of those. They're fantastic. Um,
Okay.
they really spoke to me. I absolutely love those. Um, Now that I'm saying that, though, I'm remembering my absolute favorite, and he's my gold standard. I would love to one day write something even close to this from a world building perspective, and that's the Dune series by Frank Herbert.
Yeah.
All of those books, and then on the TV side, or the live action side, I'm gonna have to say Firefly by Joss Whedon.
Okay.
I love Firefly. I absolutely love it, and it feels sacrilegious to put it over Star Trek for me.
Hmm.
But it appeals to me. It's kind of like Star Wars and Star Trek mixed together for me. So
Yeah. No. Listen,
I love that show.
I loved Firefly when it came out. I've watched it. I don't know how. I mean, it's only 13 episodes. I don't know how many
Yeah,
times I've rewatched that series, but yeah, I mean, I could see how people would put that up there. I mean,
yeah,
if I go for TV film, it's for me, it's Stargate. But I
great.
love, you know, and you're ex-military. I've always pictured if something like that, like a Stargate was found, the military would somehow have control over it.
Yeah.
It kind of made it believable to me. um,
I
so
guess I'd have to throw in an honorable mention on the TV side as well.
mm,
It's not a well-known TV series, but
mm,
I really enjoyed it, and I have to say that it's been an inspiration in some of my writing for ASAP. There was a sci-fi series called Warehouse 13 that
oh,
did
I
5
love
seasons.
that show.
Yes, yes,
Let me tell you something. I will say this: the Sci-Fi Channel knows how to ruin their shows. They only do like 3 to 5 seasons, and like I love all that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Low budget type of sci-fi stuff. Like they even had Sanctuary on there, which started as a web series, which was good. But then, like by the time they got to the last season, it's like they didn't know what the heck they were doing
yeah.
anymore. And I felt that way about Warehouse 13. They had such a great premise there.
Or they lose focus. Like
Yeah,
Eureka was pretty good to start off with, and then lost
yeah,
focus. A lot of them, but yeah, Warehouse 13. The cast was great. The stories are great. I love the whole concept. Because it gave you Creature of the Week, but in a different way because it was Artifact of the Week.
yeah,
And the history that went with it. It was just a great show.
yeah.
Loved it. So
That's Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. That's great.
it-
I haven't read as much as you have in both sci-fi fantasy. Growing up, I had issues reading, so like I didn't start reading until really getting into reading until somewhere in my mid to late 20s. So I'm
mhm.
behind on a lot of books that I should have read when I was younger. Um, but,
I would say if you like unique magic systems, this was see, I was on the border of mentioning this one from science fiction, and it's not science fiction, it's fantasy, but the magic based system is based a lot on physics. Um, there's a series called the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, and the magic system is where you eat different trace metals and you can burn them to do things. So like you can push on stuff, but if you push, you'll get an opposite reaction and things like that. And so you can fly by throwing a coin on the ground and pushing on the coin, and because the coin is anchored on the ground, you'll push yourself into the air, and then you pull yourself to move along and stuff like that. So it's a really cool series with a great magic system that is unique. I've never seen anybody else do anything like it. It's one of the coolest things I've ever
wow.
read. So
I'll definitely have to look into that. That sounds great. Um, so and how long has been Raincross been around?
We will be we're really new. We will
Okay.
be a year in November.
Well,
So
congratulations on that.
thank you. Yeah, and we've had our teething pains. I tried to uh you talk about people learning lessons. I
Mhm.
learned my lessons. I've talked to people and I'm learning lessons all the time. My initial plan out of the gate was to try and do 100-page magazine quarterly, something like 2000 AD or heavy metal, which is
Yeah,
still
yeah,
what I would like to get to. But for a new company and everything, that was way too much to bite off. And, so
yeah,
it's like we've scaled back now. We didn't get funded the first time we tried to do it. We've got the funding to do these 2 comics we're doing now, and we're doing that. And, you know, we'll build up to it. But, it's those lessons that you have to learn. You have to, that you realize, oh, we got to crawl first. So,
yeah, yeah. No, I get. It. I was coming back into this year, so I've been out. I don't want to say I've been out of comics for a while, but I haven't like been really creating for a while. And I'm like, this year's going to be my year. I'm going to start doing it. I had all these plans, and right now the only thing I'm able to get through is the Wiz once a week, which so it's a slow start. But I have it. I have plans to run anthologies and put out some other books and stuff. So things are going to happen, but they're going to move a little slower. But it's just like what you were
yeah.
saying. You gotta, you know.
Plus, once you take all that on, you got.
Hmm.
It used to be that all I was doing was writing, and now it's like I've got, podcasts and the business stuff to do, and then I've got other responsibilities with ASAP besides writing that I help with, and so now writing is kind of my escape, and so recently my novel came out with ASAP, with Any
Hmm.
One World, the long game,
Yes,
and
I was going to ask you about
um
that.
no, that's I'm sorry.
It's
Um,
okay.
no, it's just you had reminded me of that, and it's like people are asking me when is the sequel coming out, and I'm like, eventually. So it's like I've got part of it written. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
but that is a long process. So novels. That is the one thing I found. It's like novels take up a lot of your time. Not that
yeah.
comic scripts or anything are easy, but I can do those much faster than I can do a full novel for some reason, whatever reason. Yeah.
I've actually been wanting to do a novel myself. I think I mentioned on the magic story that I was telling you about. I wrote 100, maybe 110, 15-page comic. And when I was done writing, I'm like, I don't want to draw this. And it's been literally almost a decade, if not longer, that I've had this done.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be like a 6-part graphic novel type of story. And I'm like, I just don't want to do it anymore. So I've been thinking about doing it as a novel, but I'm like, I don't have the time. So my goal is to try to get far enough ahead on the Wiz that I can at least take, excuse me, a day or two a week to just sit down and write. But hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think I'll be honest. The first When I first was finishing up the novel, because like I said, I'd written a lot of things, and looking back now, they were finished, but they weren't finished because once you're done writing, that's only like 30% of the job. The editing and
Yeah,
everything else, or revising. But um, to me, it was the length, the number of words that was daunting. Now that's not
yeah,
what's daunting. What's daunting to me is knowing all of the other stuff that you have to do once you finish writing, which is all the editing and revising and all that. It's like at a certain point, I mean, this was my baby. They're all my babies, but this was my
yeah,
baby. And at the end of it, I was so done reading that story. I was like, somebody take this from me, please, and just kill it. Put it out
yeah,
there, do something.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I get that. I get that. But you said the name of your novel is The Long Game.
yeah, it's the long game. So
Can you tell us about it?
sure, it's you're going to sense a theme here. It is a paranormal thriller with some horror elements to it. It's called The Long Game. It opens up with a double murder in front of a women's medical clinic in Queens, and the detectives come to the scene to investigate. And what it was is one woman killed another woman who was going to the clinic, and then in turn was murdered by the mob because there was a protest going on out in front of that
Okay.
clinic. And as the detectives start pulling on the strings to figure out what's going on, they get a lot of pushback from various agencies, the city government, the FBI, and they find out that all of this is tied to a conspiracy decades in the making. And it turns out to be a demonic conspiracy to achieve a certain purpose. And they find out what that is. So, and it's going to lead, I'm planning on doing 6 more books in the series. So,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds really good. And people can get that where? Is that part of ASAP, you said?
Yeah, that same link that I put up there, the book should be down there in that as well. So
Awesome. Well, you guys should check that out, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been on sale for a while, and I'm getting good feedback from it, and I do enjoy the characters. It was fun to write. It was difficult to write sometimes, but yeah, I love writing that stuff, and I love writing scary stuff. I love to write about stuff that scares me, and I'm a big fan. I grew up with, I think the first horror movie I ever watched at way too young an age was The Omen on TV when I was like 7, I think, something like that. It was on ABC, and I can't believe I remember that. And ever since then, I've been hooked on those types of, plot lines and things like that. So I love doing that kind of stuff. So, and yeah, I enjoyed it, and my parents enjoyed it, which I was kind of shocked by. My mom read it and loved it, and then my dad actually read it and loved it too. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna retire right now on top. So it's over. So.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I know you said you're not, it's not coming out anytime soon, but have an idea when you're going to get to the second issue?
I have outlined the second one and written about half of it. The second book, the same detective, the lead detective, well, that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's called the Michael DeMicheli novel, so you probably would guess that he's going to survive. He is called in to help investigate a murder in the Catholic Church, the Catholic Chapel at West Point. And the name of the book is called A Time for Wrath. So yeah, okay. I'm going back to my roots at West Point. So and yeah, it's gonna be fun because I've got first of all, I got lots of issues to deal with West Point, so we'll put some of those in the book, And I got lots of cool stories and cool things. I was talking to somebody last week about West Point, and I was telling them a couple cool things. Like one, most people don't know that the whole of the island underneath the cadet part of the campus there is covered with steam tunnels underneath. So there's like dungeons underneath there that you can go through. Wow. And there are places where you'll turn where all of a sudden there's a door with an electronic lock on it that says no admittance. And you have no idea what's behind it and stuff like that. I mean, that's like pure gold for a horror writer or a paranormal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then another story I was telling, I was writing a paper one time, and I was in the West Point Library, and the library is 3 stories above ground, but it's like 26 stories below ground. It goes down into the island, and or into the ground there, and so the stacks are down there. So I was down in the stacks. I was like level 21 or 22 or something like that, way down underground. And I'm looking through the books or whatever, and I took a wrong turn, and I come upon this whole section, huge section of books at West Point, United States Military Academy, and all of the books are on the paranormal. We're talking books from as early as like the 800s about demonology and magic and witch hunting and all of these things, some of them written in Latin and everything. And there's a whole collection of these old books, 21 stories down at the Military Academy. Now, I don't know what they were doing there in real life, but as far as a horror writer is concerned, that is the stuff of gold, legend that you can work with. So.
Wow. Are you allowed to be giving these secrets away? I mean,
yeah, sure. Hey, if more power to you. If you can manage to sneak into the West Point Library, go look for it. It's there, I promise you. So.
Oh, and you mentioned earlier, you do a podcast. Can you tell us about your podcast and what you do with them?
Sure.
And where we can find you on them too.
Sure. So first of all, I do podcasts for ASAP Imagination. Uh, I've been doing podcasts for a while with Comic Crusaders, and so Paul asked to leverage my experience doing that to do the Anyone World Showcase, and that's actually on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock Pacific, so 7 Eastern, and that show highlights people who are creators that have signed up with the Anyone World, but we talk to indie creators and it's about their work. But it's really kind of a loose, fun podcast where we talk about pop culture and other stuff as well.
Yeah,
And we do a lot of that, and it's really fun. And then on Thursdays, I help run behind the scenes for Lori Cunningham's Drink and Draw with Lori, which is on at 9 o'clock Central, so 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 o'clock Eastern. You could tell I have to do time zones all the time because everybody's all over the world. And that's a fun show where Lori does the real stuff where she's drawing great stuff, and I try and do comedy and keep people entertained while we're, reading doing all that. And it's just a fun show. And then for Comic Crusaders, I've done a variety of different shows for them. Right now, I host every Friday at 4 o'clock Pacific time, 4 p.m. Pacific time, on the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel. It's called Cinema Crusaders. And we look at older movies. So movies have to be at least 10 years old. And it's trying to reintroduce people to movies that we think, people might not know about or whatever, And so, like last week, we did a little-known indie movie from the early 2000s called Series 7, The Contenders, which is really more Running Man than Running Man. This week, we're doing The Great Train Robbery, starring Sean Connery and Donald Sutherland from 1979. Great movie. We do all sorts of different movies and genres, and I love that. And then a friend of mine, Mike Nunnally, asked me to help him host a monthly horror podcast called Countless Corpses Podcast. So, and I do that with him, and it airs once a month. So, yeah.
that's awesome. So you do a lot. Now, you said you do reviews of movies and comics and stuff. What comic could you recommend to people right now, whether it's indie or mainstream? What would you say, based on what you've recently reviewed? What can you tell my fans, like, you got to check out?
Elvira in Horrorland from Dynamite right now is fantastic. I will be right up front and say that I am friends with the writer, David Avallone. But even that said, it is an incredibly funny and witty comic. If you like horror movies and stuff, like the history of horror, this particular series is wonderful because she's traveling through the history of horror, trying to get back to our present time. And I will also say, I've gotten the pleasure of talking to Cassandra Peterson before, and I know David. She reads the script for each one of those comics and writes some of the jokes and approves them and everything. So, it's very authentic. It's a lot of fun. It's a really fun comic. The other one I'm reading right now that I'm really enjoying still is really it's a mainstream one, but I still like it. It's Moon Knight. Moon Knight has been good for Marvel. I like that. So,
That's good. I haven't read Marvel in a while, so I'm not familiar what's going on. I'm a DC guy. I'm more indie these days, but I will say the one that I'm reading, I mentioned to you before we came on the air, was the new Shazam. It's had 2 issues out right now.
Yeah.
And I listen, here's what I'm going to tell you about it. In a story that happened before this book, he got nicknamed Captain again. So he's going by Captain instead of Shazam, which, number one, cool. I loved. Number 2, all the family members that they have that have the powers right now, they're all missing the powers except for Billy and Mary. So I'm like, okay, those 2 have their powers. I feel like they're going back a little bit to more of the classic Captain Marvel stuff. His costumes changed to look a little more classic-like. And the other thing about the story, which we don't know too much yet, but the gods that make up his name are not happy with the way Billy's handling the powers.
Wow.
So it sounds like a very, very interesting stuff that's going to happen.
I will say from the indies front, one of the comics that I'm really interested in, and I've ordered a copy, but I've gotten to see some stuff because of my work with Any One World and ASAP Imagination.
Mhm.
Lori Calcaterra writes a title called Path of the Pale Rider, and it's kind of a Western zombie story, but it's interesting because it's only a zombie story because death has gone away, and so people can't die, and so even when you're dead, you're still alive in your body and just kind of rotting away, and so the
Oh,
main character is looking for why death has disappeared
that
in a
is,
kind of post-apocalyptic Western setting.
yeah. No, that sounds awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not my go-to book, but what's it called? That it sounds like a great idea to hear. You're not even really dead, even though you are, like, you're rotting from the end. You see it like that. It sounds like a great concept. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to recommend another book, but I forgot the name of it. I had to look it up. I believe it's the new. I'm looking for the publisher. It's the new book by I think Image is putting out, by Robert Kirkman. Um,
Yes.
Void Rivals. That book, I read the first issue. I thought it was a brilliant first issue. The ending was great. It's going to introduce, from what I understand, a new Transformers line of
Ooh,
books. But
cool.
yeah, there is a special appearance by a Transformer in there. But as I read the story, and I saw him, and I saw the character, I'm like, okay, it's one of my favorites from childhood. He looks like a Gen 1 Transformer for me. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. But now, does this story happen pre them going to Earth? Or is this in the future after Earth and something happened on a mission? Like, what I mean, like, how are they using this character now? Like, that's what
Right.
I'm curious about. So right now, that is called Void Rivals and Shazam are the two books I'm on right now. And I'm like,
Yeah. I saw that somebody else had reviewed that for Comic Crusaders, and I read that review, and it seems really interesting. So,
yeah.
and the art looks great too. So,
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous art. I don't see who the artist is right now. I'd have to look it up there because Robert Kirkman gets the titles here.
yeah. So,
Oh
yeah,
no, colors. I'm sorry, artist Lorenzo Di Felici or something.
cool.
I think is how you say it. Okay, sorry.
No, yeah, I'd seen that and it looked amazing. I was going to say, I am reading a DC book right now. I'm still reading Detective Comics,
Mhm.
and I'm just kind of, it's not, it's gotten better. I'm not going to say it was bad. It's just it needs a shot in the arm of something, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
what. I thought Scott Snyder had done some good stuff, but it's like I've been a Detective Comics collector for so long that it's just
Mhm.
I'm not going to stop. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those
Yeah.
things.
I'm kind of in and out of collecting. I look for good stuff every now and then. The one thing I will always collect is this guy right here, Gru. Oh,
Oh,
I
cool.
haven't read this issue. This is the new one, Gru in the Wild. It's one of four. Um, but you know, my friend Tom, who was on last week, who owns the Spider's Web in Yonkers, which is my local comic shop, he knows how much of a Gru fan I am. And it's funny because the comic shop, the Spider's Web, went out of business a few months ago, and Tom is the new owner. And Gru versus the Gods issue 1 just came out. Like, issue 2 was about to be published as the Spider's Web was closing, and I couldn't get issue 2 anywhere. So
Oh,
when he finally got his books coming in and everything, he was able to get issues 3 and 4, but we still had to wait for 2. So I finally got 2 a few weeks ago from him, and he's like, a new Gru book's out. Michael, it's on your pull list already. Like, great thing. I'm a huge Sergio fan, so.
very cool. Very cool.
But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited to read those.
For some reason, it reminds me. I'm a fan of. It's a French comic, Asterix, the
Oh,
Gaul.
love
So
Asterix.
yeah. So yeah, I love reading it. And actually, my parents, have been able to find me some of them in French. So it's encouraged me to bone up on my French to be able to read the book.
Wow,
So which
that's awesome.
takes a while, but you know.
Yeah, my first book of his was, I think it was in German. I didn't read it. My friend did a summer in Germany for school or something, and he goes, I came back, and this was like high school time, and he came back and he was like, yeah, I bought you this comic. It's very popular over there, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I love the artwork, but I knew nothing about it. And then when I learned about it, I was like, oh my God, I got an English copy. I started reading it. But I didn't realize growing up on shows like the Smurfs, I was really into that whole Franco-Belgian style.
Yeah.
And, Peo is a huge influence on me. Um, there's, I got into Lucky Luke. I got into, uh, Tintin, all those books. And you know, and that's one of the things. Like, okay, I'm always going to love superheroes. It's just part of me. I grew up on them. But when you see, or like when I learned years ago how that European culture looks at comics like that, as those are their comics, it doesn't have to be Spider-Man and all these things, and they just love. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like,
Yeah.
and the stories are fun. The style is nice.
I remember that moment when I realized that there were comics outside the United States. I think I was in like middle school or freshman in high school. And that was when I first saw like Heavy Metal Magazine and 2000 AD. And then I got into, Asterix and Titan comics later came along. And now I work for ASAP Imagination and we're, doing something different. And so I hear exactly what you're saying, and it's like these different stories that are told in Europe. Man, I'm all about it. I absolutely love it. So
I
it's like
actually have. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I don't have anything against the Cape and Cal crew as well,
Yeah.
but it's like there's so much more. There's so many more possibilities out there. It's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've always told people that I think my humor doesn't do well sometimes here in America because I'm so influenced by European comics that I think I just got to figure out how to get my stuff into a European market, and
yeah.
that might be my
Well,
you know. I'm
yeah. I
sorry, you were
mean,
going to say something.
even yeah. I was gonna say I'm even stuff like I'm a soccer fan, or football, over
Hmm.
in England. Um, they've got a comic over there that's been going for years called Roy of the Rovers, which is a soccer comic,
Really?
and it is really good. So, there's lots of stuff going on. So, I mean, they got comics of all different types
Yeah,
for stuff going on over there. So, yeah, it's great.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, and with how manga has influenced, and that's also I think changed how people view comics today. I was at a comic shop a few weeks ago, um, with a friend, and usually, I just mentioned the Spider's Web. They always get my money when I want like my regular books and I want a special order stuff. But when I go to shops and I try to make some deals with
Hmm.
yeah, well, hey, I'm a comic artist. I'll come do an appearance, whatever. I always buy something kind of like to show a little faith, and um, they had a Captain Harlock trade there of the original 5 books or whatever of it. I'm like, well, that's coming home with me, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm. I mean, like, yeah, I'm a manga anime fan for that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's
Even
great.
even their stuff they're doing with superheroes, I think is really interesting. Like My Hero Academia is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I'm collecting a little bit of manga, every month when I can. Like I'm
Hmm.
collecting this series right now, which is science fiction, Dimension W.
Okay, I've heard
I
of
mean,
that. I've never read it.
yeah, it's fantastic, and great stories. And the stories have a beginning, middle, and end too. I'm
Hmm.
not opposed to something going for a long time, but eventually, characters die and go out even on long running stuff. So I
Yeah.
think I kind of like that. I wish as a Detective Comics fan, I wish they would make it official that Bruce retired and that Batman Beyond, becomes canon, and everything,
Yeah.
and go on from there. So I like when that happens. So
they'll never do that. So,
yeah, I know. They won't kill the
but
golden, the
exactly.
golden goose.
Yeah, they won't do that. But it's it's their stuff. They got to keep what's selling. And
Absolutely.
so. But before we go, I wanted to pull up a piece of art. I
Sure.
told you I wanted to show you my Sherlock Holmes piece.
Ooh, cool.
And it's just I was doing these things I wanted to sell as prints, and I never got around to making prints of them. So, and this is just on my website. It's just a little gallery of my cartoon art and stuff. But you can see the Sherlock Holmes right there. And
Oh yeah.
this was I played around so long with that. Making this background was one of the most annoying things I had to do. And I'll tell you, this was my only experiment ever with AI art. I couldn't find a good piece, so I said, let me get a piece of wallpaper. And it's a little square that I just manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another reason why I may not ever do anything with it, because it's AI art and is in there, and I'm not a fan of it. I just wanted to experiment. But
That would,
yeah.
I'll tell you, I don't know if you would want to do that, but I would totally read a comic strip of Sherlock Holmes. I mean, you probably couldn't get
No,
the
he's public
rights to do
domain.
it. Is he?
He's public
Okay.
domain now. Yeah, everything. A few years ago, I believe all his books officially went into public domain either this year or last year. But yeah, I have ideas for things. I mean, he's not in public domain, but I would love a Doc Savage piece that and I'm like, I love all those old pulpy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like that.
Yeah, that looks great. Yeah, I was trying to find real quick before we go. And
yeah, let me stop the share.
It always helps to be prepared ahead of time, which of course I'm not. So.
Well, we never thought we'd go into this. That's one of the things I love about my show. We just kind of sidetrack and talk about stuff.
Let's see. Oops. Let me stop sharing that and then share. This is the cover for The Long Game, and this was done by a comic artist, and I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
So I love to show that off. I think it is one of my favorite pieces. I think one of these days I'm going to have to get it made into like a poster or something, get it up on my wall, because I think it's just amazing. And that was done by, gosh, now I'm going to forget his name, Kyle. I know his first name. But he is also the artist on the first issue of Messiah for ASAP Imagination as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
So absolutely amazing. Yeah, I saw his work on that, and I was like, "Hey, can you do my cover for me?" And he came up with this, and yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. So
I actually bought a bunch of books. This just reminds me of one of them. I'd have to go look for. It's on one of my shelves back there. But I went to I did a pulp con last year, and there were a lot of great pulp writers. Let's see, for those who have never heard, although I used to pour this book out on my show like crazy. Zorro's Exploits. I illustrated 2 stories in this book for Bold Venture Press, and when I did the pulp show, I got to meet a few of the writers of these stories, and what's it called? I bought a few of their books because they just sounded in it. But one, it's not that it's anything you've talked about, but the cover, it's a detective story. It kind of reminds me a little bit.
That's my childhood right there. I used to dress up as Zorro for Halloween all the time. So
I am Zorro and Superman were like my every other year. I used to switch off. I am a huge Zorro fan. When I got this project to do, and my friend Don Smith, I got to thank because he recommended me, and he's the guy I mentioned who does the Sherlock Holmes talks. But I remember he messaged me on Facebook, and he was like, "Do you want to draw Zorro for a book?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? What?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to do he's like, I got this gig to write a Zorro story, and they asked if I knew any writers, and I recommended you." I said, "Are you kidding me? Like, just this is my dream come true." And yeah, so I wrote actually two. It's funny for someone who's not a horror fan. I wrote I illustrated two of their I guess what would be the horror stories in here.
Cool.
The first what? Hold on, let me just remove. I just get the.
Cool.
I removed me. Um, just to show you in here. The first is that's a little kind of wolf. I want a little cartoony and stuff,
Uh-huh.
but where is it here? It's a. I'm looking for a certain piece. It's a vampire story. So Zorro and the vampire sword fighting
Oh, wow.
right there. Um, and there was another one I did, and it was a werewolf story. And this is always one of my favorite pieces because my friend's a big Doctor Who fan. Not this piece, but that piece I enjoy too. Zorro watching the kids play Zorro and stuff.
Very cool.
Um, he uh, he's a big Doctor Who fan, and he wrote one of the characters to look like Tom Baker. So I got to draw Tom Baker as being scared by the werewolf. And,
Nice.
His cart is a TARDIS in the back, technically. So it's all hinted. Doesn't look anything like it officially. It's just influenced.
Very cool, though.
Yeah.
That's
was one of my
amazing. I'm glad you
favorite
liked
pieces.
Zorro. So
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm actually rewatching on Disney Plus the Guy Williams Zorro right now.
love that.
Yeah, I'm such a fan. Because it's one of those shows I don't have to pay attention to when I work, but I can turn my head and adjust my eyes for a little bit and watch the good sword fights. The humor in there. I was even telling my wife, I'm like, they don't write like this anymore. The jokes, they're just little clever one-liners. Like there was a joke last night. The whole episode they were talking about Sergeant Garcia losing weight, and he was talking about how he was drinking some wine, and the waitress says to him, he was like, "How's the barrel supposed to get empty if you keep filling it up?" And I was just like, such a witty, clever joke to say to a fat guy trying to lose weight. I'm like, oh my God, it was.
For me, it was always cool too because one part of my family has been in California for over 400 years at this point.
Wow.
Spanish, Mexican. Once we become part of Mexico, and yeah, so I always like that, and I always make my wife laugh because I'll come in sometimes and raise my eyebrow. And goes, "Mi nombre es Don Diego de la Vega," So
that's there's a line, I don't remember the line, but you would totally get it. And I remember talking to the writer and geeking out because I'm like, what page parts do you want me to draw? And there was this one line he said, God, I wish I remembered it, but it said something like, and Diego used a tone that only that caballeros learn at a young age or something. But it was like, that tone listening to Guy Williams talk and get like tough. And I was like, wow, that is just, it was just the perfect line to describe him.
Well, now we're gonna have to cover the history of Zorro sometime, and I'll invite you on as a guest on like Cinema Crusaders or something.
I will love to talk about Zorro.
Yeah, that would be great. From Douglas Fairbanks all the way up through the most recent Zorro, which Antonio Banderas, and on.
Yeah,
so,
and then we got a couple of others. I heard they're doing I think a French version now, and what's his name? The guy from that '70s show is supposed to be doing it for the Disney.
I heard that.
Disney Plus, yeah.
Yeah, so, I love all that. I love that old swashbuckling style, though. I remember, even though things have come out about Errol Flynn that aren't good in his personal life, the old Errol Flynn, the Robin Hood and Seawolf and all the other stuff that he did was great as well. So just too bad he was a Nazi spy or whatever.
I mean, listen, it's I don't know how to judge those things anymore.
Yeah.
The world is so crazy with that, and I'm like, listen, I loved Zorro. I saw the Tyrone Power. I saw the Guy Williams. How do you say his name? The one from the '90s. Is it Duncan Regehr? Regehr?
Yes.
I never say his name right. But like that guy, Dracula from the Monster Squad, he was Zorro. That was like I watched all those things. I saw the cartoon versions.
Heck, I
read
even like
the books.
I even liked the movie with George.
Oh, George Hamilton, Zorro
George
the
Hamilton,
Gay Blade.
yeah. I always get a good laugh out of that movie.
Yeah, that's a great. I have them all in my closet on DVD.
Yeah,
and then Tubi has a bunch like Zorro, or had a bunch of Zorros, because like when I first got that gig to draw, I literally, like, even before they officially said here's your story, I immersed myself in nothing but Zorro for over a month. Wow. I watched they're like, oh, it's going to be based on either you can only use the not Tyrone Power, either the Guy Williams or the Duncan Regehr look. Like those were the only two styles I could pull from. But I didn't care. I watched Antonio Banderas. I put on the old Zorro, I forgot who it was, where he had the mask on the bottom and not the other, like he had the.
Was that Richard Fairbanks back in the day?
I have to look it up, but it was Zorro's Fighting Legion, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like I watched everything. I just said whatever I can find for free and whatever I had on DVD, That's great. Immersed myself into that. So
that warms my heart. Good old California superhero there too.
Yeah. I want to go back and reread. I have the collection of the Curse of Capistrano. Yeah. I just want to go back and reread that one day.
Actually, I had this. It wasn't an argument. It was a good friendly nerd discussion with a friend of mine the other day, because I was saying that the classic DC character El Diablo is a complete ripoff of Zorro, and he's like, no, it was original. I was like, no, man, come on.
Are you kidding me? It looks just
just like him. Yeah, it was like, it's Zorro. So.
I mean, Batman is a ripoff of Zorro and Doc Savage. I mean, we could do a whole show just on how pulp heroes, the heroes that we love now, came from the pulp heroes.
Yep.
Exactly.
I mean, so.
Oh my God, I had a conversation with someone once about, they're like, I'm like, Superman is John Carter from Mars, and he was like, no, he's not. I'm like, it's the story in reverse,
Yep.
And
exactly.
They weren't at it. Yeah.
It's great stuff.
But anyway, I should wrap up.
Okay.
Because on my end it's 10:30, and I know you are still early by you.
Yeah.
And and I got to do some things. So, but yeah, no, listen, man, it was really great talking to you.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thank you.
Yeah. So. Oh, anytime, you're welcome back. Anytime, love to just come on and talk about. We can talk about anything, Zorro, whatever it is. I don't care. I'm sure we'll we'll have fun. But I want to just remind everyone, David posted in the comments the link to his collection at ASAP Imagination. So you can find all the stuff he does for ASAP Imagination in that link. All right. Also check out, and I didn't ask for the link, but it's called Raincross Press.
Mm-hmm. And it's raincrosspress.com, so it's easy to find. So we are still in production for our 2 books, but we should be having something out by the end of the year. So look for that. So
awesome. And the name again of your podcast that you do is?
I do Countless Corpses podcast, the Any One World show, or the Any One World Showcase, Drink and Draw with Lori. I also do Cinema Crusaders, and I forgot to mention it, but I DM a D&D group called the Fellowship of the D20s on Sunday as well. So.
Oh my God, man! How do you have time to sleep?
I don't. I take inspiration from our fearless leader Hades. There, he never sleeps. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to drop you backstage, do my wrap up, and I'll see you in a moment. All right.
Okay. Yep. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. All right. So that was a very fun show. I really, really enjoyed talking with him. Again, the link is in the comments. The other place, look up raincrosspress.com. Look at all the podcasts that I can't even remember. He just said they were just all over the place. Good stuff, though. Next week, ASAP Imagination is going to be back because the woman Lori he's been mentioning will be my guest. So thanks, David. Thanks, Hades, for introducing me to all you people. You guys are great. I love ASAP Imagination. You got a fan right here. I love everything you guys do. I'll see you guys next week when I'll be talking to Lori. All right. Have a great rest of your night, guys.